What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the New York Mets post-game show here on this lovely Friday night where the New York Mets are victorious in Atlanta by a score of 12-7. We are recapping this game and talking about both the offensive and pitching performances. But before we fully get into it, please do smash those thumbs up buttons, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts and opinions in the live chat section. I definitely appreciate everyone being here with me on this lovely evening. It's always good to talk about Mets wins, and it seems like as of recent, we haven't been able to do that all that often. And I'll definitely get into a little bit of the national series as well that we saw in DC. And I was present for that series in all three games, and it was not a great time whatsoever. It was just not a great time. So I'll get into that. I'll get into this game here in just a second. But before we do, again, drop those comments in the live chat. Hit the thumbs up buttons on this video and make sure to subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. And if you are a new viewer, Mets fans, 21 base hits for this team. I believe that ties a season record so far in 2025, and the offense showed up and they showed out often in this game to set the tone for this series. And I will take a look at the box score here in just a second. You'll see the line for Nolan McLean, and you will also go ahead and see the box score from the Mets offense. But I wanted to talk about the offense first and foremost, and then get into the performance of Nolan McLean in his second start of his career so far in the major league. So let's go ahead and look at that right here. From Francisco Lindor all the way down to Hayden Sanger, this lineup showed out. They were phenomenal, especially against Joey Wentz, who had absolutely zero answers for them in this game. Lindor setting the tone from the leadoff spot, 3 for 5 with a walk, and he did strike out. But, you know, his bat is just absolutely getting going in this month of August. He's posting incredible numbers, and he's finally getting out of that extended slump that we saw in the summer months from Francisco Lindor. Juan Soto, have yourself a night, 3 for 4, an opposite field home run. And I have no idea how that ball stayed in play to the left side of the diamond. That was absolutely phenomenal. And Juan Soto also, you know, it's funny when we're talking about Juan Soto and some of the quote unquote struggles that he has had in this season, and some of the numbers that I guess Mets fans want to talk about, a lack of runners in scoring position success this season. Um, I don't know, something about Juan Soto, especially, and I've been a longtime proponent of him in the 3-hole, especially to begin the season. But since moving back into going from 3, right, back into that 2-hole, it does seem like he is a little bit more comfortable. And this lineup seems like they are going a little bit more with him in that 2-hole. So, you know, the lineup construction right now is a very difficult thing to actually talk about because of the injuries that this lineup has sustained. Brandon Nimmo has been sitting the last couple of games with some neck stiffness. And you also have Jeff McNeil, who got an MRI for his shoulder. Hopefully everything's okay, but we don't have any further updates or news on Jeff McNeil. And he was not in the lineup again today when he has been swinging a pretty hot bat. So that limits the options, especially at the top of the lineup, that Carlos Mendoza can utilize. He's been going a Starling Marte in that 3-hole. And Starling Marte, all in all, especially over the past 2 weeks, has produced. He has performed. Starling Marte is not going to wow anybody. We know that he's in the later stage of his stages of his career, but he is producing with the bat, which is absolutely phenomenal. But you take a look at the box score, not only from the top of the lineup, but also the bottom of the lineup. They are it's refreshing. It's really refreshing, right? From Beatty all the way down to Hayden Sanger. And Hayden Sanger, last 2 games, 2 starts for Hayden Sanger, and he's putting good contact on the baseball. 2 for 5 tonight with 3 RBIs. That's a career high. Cedric Mullins is getting involved as well in that 8 spot, 3 for 4, 2 RBIs. He hit an absolute screamer off of the wall in right field for a 2 RBI double, and Tyrone Taylor as well. There's a lot of, I guess, talk about how the offense was going to be constructed from an outfield perspective between Tyrone Taylor and Cedric Mullins. In this case, they both were in this game at the same time, getting the starts respectively, and they did not disappoint whatsoever with the bats. And Brett Baty, we have to talk about Brett Baty here, for just a second, because in the month of August, I believe he's hitting over 380 with over a 1200 OPS. This is phenomenal production from Brett Baty, who is really taking the position by storm. And you're starting to see an everyday contribution from Brett Baty in this lineup, which is absolutely phenomenal. So, there's a lot of questions as to how often Brett Baty would be playing in the distribution between second base and third base, especially with Mark Vientos not producing. Third base was up for grabs between Mauricio and Vientos. Vientos as well is also having himself a little bit of a hot streak here. I believe he extends his hitting streak tonight, if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look at this box score right here. Vientos goes 1 for 4, and he does have, at this point, I can't say if it's four-game hit streak, but he does have a mini hit streak going on. So if you're starting to get this production from the bottom of the lineup and not necessarily relying on the top of the lineup to be that top heavy offense that we've been waiting for all season long, that is going to pay dividends and take the pressure, as much pressure as possible, off of this starting rotation as possible. And when you talk about the starting rotation, it has been a nightmare for the New York Mets, an absolute nightmare for the New York Mets over the past couple of months. And Nolan McLean definitely did get the job done tonight in his second start of his short career thus far in a Mets uniform. Let's just take a look at the numbers, and we'll get into a little bit more of the pitch arsenal and the pitch distribution that he decided to utilize in this game, because it looked a lot different than his first start versus Seattle. So 7 innings pitched tonight. And you want to take a look at something really crazy? This is the most insane. This is the most insane stat of them all when you're talking about the New York Mets staff right here. Look at this. Will Salmon, Nolan McLean is the first Mets starting pitcher other than David Peterson to complete at least 6 innings in a game since June 7th. Since June 7th. That is so many days in between that Carlos Mendoza has had to go and turn to the bullpen in the early stages of the game, which has caused this cause and effect relationship with needing to utilize guys like Ryan Helsley and Reed Garrett in this game to close things out. And I'll get to that here in just a second. But, that was not what I wanted to see, as the Braves scored countless of runs to make it 12-7 in this game, when it was a game that was out of reach and Edwin Diaz did not need to be warming up whatsoever. But, this tweet right here from Will Salmon says it all about just how pitiful this rotation has been. And this is where I'll kind of get into. This is not going to be a long post game by any means. I know it's a little bit late right now, especially on the East Coast. But I will say, watching this team in person live in DC for the past 3 days before this Atlanta Braves game was absolutely disheartening, especially in games 2 and 3. Game 1, the offense showed up, an immaculate performance, 8 innings pitched for David Peterson. But in games 2 and 3, I mean, you don't have any words as a fan. Like, you can't have any words for how those games transpired. And unfortunately, I tweeted this out late last night, after the game concluded, that I was a little bit disappointed in the New York Mets, because I was about 5 rows up from the dugout, and as a fan, you can only see what's happening within your eyesight, right? When you're looking down at the field and the dugout, the dugout's pretty hidden, but when I saw the New York Mets coming back into the dugout, especially after some of those innings where the Nationals regained the lead, I didn't see a sense of urgency. I didn't see a sense of urgency. I didn't see any excitement to go out there and go and take the lead back from the lineup and the guys that were due up. And so that was for me a little bit eye-opening. But again, as a fan in the stands watching a game live, there's only so much that you can see, especially with what's happening in the dugout. But the energy wasn't there. The energy wasn't there. It was off. And today, through the TV screen, you know, you could feel a little bit of a different energy. Um, and so winning cures all. I think everybody knows that. Winning cures all, not only for the players, but for also us Mets fans that are just watching this team go through an abysmal stretch and fighting for their lives to stay in this wild card race as they are now neck and neck with the Cincinnati Reds, who are starting up a game here. Actually, it's about 40 minutes into their game with the Diamondbacks. I believe they are playing. That was a 9:40 start time. But, I just when you talk about energy and you talk about, dugout or clubhouse vibes and feel, I just would like to see this team a little bit more energized. And, you know, watching this team for the first time in a couple of months this season, it put things into perspective that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But I definitely did just I was kind of put off by the energy that they were bringing and showing, especially when they were losing to the Nationals in back-to-back games. Again, I was there for all 3 games, and it just was not great whatsoever. But going back to the box score here, Nolan McLean, this is the energy, this is the excitement, and this is the impact. And that last word that I just used is biggest the biggest and most important thing of them all, the impact that a young pitcher like Nolan McLean can have on your rotation, right? He's got 12 and a third innings pitched so far in 2 starts in his career. 2 earned runs given up tonight across 94 pitches. He's sitting right there between 90 to 95 pitches in his first 2 starts. 4 hits given up, 7 strikeouts. That's 15 strikeouts in his first 2 games as a New York Met at the major league level. That is absolutely phenomenal. And the one thing that I absolutely loved was I actually loved a couple of things about this start in comparison to his last start. Not only the amount of innings that he went, but you saw a little bit more efficiency with Nolan McLean. You saw a little bit more efficiency with no walks compared to the 4 walks that he gave up in the 5 and a thirds innings pitched in his first start. And so that allows any pitcher, not only Nolan McLean, but any pitcher in this rotation to go further into the game. And that's a lesson that I think a lot of guys in this rotation, like Senga, Manaya, and most of the time Clay Holmes, can definitely learn. You have to limit the walks. And it's not rocket science at the end of the day. Us as Mets fans see this on our screen. I'm sure Jeremy Hefner sees it. I'm sure these pitchers know it. And I'm not sure what the actual remedy is for these pitchers moving forward, whether they're in the bullpen or the rotation to limit the walks. But that is the one aspect that I think that will alleviate so many problems for this team and these pitchers moving forward in this season is just alleviating the walks, especially to the bottom of the lineup. 8, 9 hitters. No reason why they should be given free passes to turn the lineup over. And so that's one thing that if the Mets are going to turn this season around and actually make this playoff push, they're going to need to solve. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens there. Appreciate everyone in the live chat. I definitely appreciate everyone here rocking with the stream here. Make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons and subscribe for more post-game streams. Again, I do apologize. I am on very limited time in this post-game stream, but keep on dropping those live chat comments. I definitely appreciate it. And make sure to follow me on X and Instagram, as well as TikTok at True Mets Talk. You can follow me there for probably some fiery and lively in-game tweets and posts and updates as well. So the one thing that I also wanted to talk about, there's actually two things I want to talk about. One was the pitch arsenal, I guess, and distribution of Nolan McLean in this outing versus the last outing against the Mariners. And I think that's very important because I made it a point to not only give Nolan McLean praises after what he did in his MLB debut, because he definitely deserved that, but I was looking at the pitch arsenal and the pitch distribution, and I said, you know what? He was really heavily reliant on that sweeper against the Mariners. And I do understand there are different game plans, there are different lineups that you need to approach differently, and that's absolutely understandable. But I would like to see him utilize the fastball a lot more. And that's exactly what I said after his first start. And that's exactly what he did, whether it was his decision, whether it was Hayden Sanger's decision, or Jeremy Hefner's decision to utilize the fastball at a little bit of a higher clip in this outing. Versus the Braves, he threw 44 fastballs combined when you're talking about two-seamers versus four-seamers and combining those, versus only I believe 33 in his first outing against the Mariners. Listen, Nolan McLean is a very talented pitcher, and he's got a very, very talented off-speed arsenal that he can utilize between his curveball and his slider. And you take a look at the spin rate on all these pitches, they speak for itself, right? It speaks for itself. But I do think, right, he throws 96, 97, he can dial it up into the high 90s if he really wants to. I think that against certain lineups, if you work the locations, whether, you utilize a fastball up in the zone, depending on what you identify as the hitter's weakness, I just think that that fastball is too talented. Like the fastball is too great to not be utilizing and using as your predominant pitch. And we've had these discussions as well with Edwin Diaz. I know it's light years different of an approach and a conversation, but when you talk about pitchers in this league that have a good fastball with spin rate, velocity, everything else included, I think that that should be the predominant pitch. And then you can throw hitters off balance and get their timings, off by utilizing the slider and the curveball thereafter. Um, Again, I would expect this to flip flop. I don't think that one start for Nolan McLean moving forward is going to look like the next start or the previous start. And that is a credit to how many different pitches that he throws. I mean, you see on your screen right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different pitches that he has to utilize in his arsenal, which makes him such a viable weapon. But for me personally, right, when you take a look at the success and the lack of walks and maybe a little bit more of the controllability of the zone in this start, maybe versus the 4 walks that he gave up in the previous start. And I'm not saying that's the end all be all and that's the actual answer here, but I'm sure it helps because generally when you throw a fastball, whether it's a two-seamer or a four-seamer, you're going to be able to throw it in the zone at a higher rate than the slider and the curveball. And Nolan McLean, the reason why he's striking out a lot of hitters, 8 strikeouts in the first game and 7 strikeouts tonight in the second game, is because he gets into pitchers' counts. That's the one thing that he knows how to do. And that's something that I feel like a lot of young pitchers, when they come up in this league, that's one thing they struggle with. And then the walks start to accumulate. But with the high put out rate that he has and the ability that he has to put hitters, major league hitters, out at a high clip via the strikeout, he gets himself into advantageous counts. And we've been seeing that more often than not in his first two starts. So that's something that I definitely wanted to point out. I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of the difference in approach to the Braves lineup versus the Mariners lineup in the first two starts of his career thus far. But, going back into, I guess, the last point that I wanted to mention about this game, because the offense, all in all, maybe outside of that third game of the National Series where they put up, a quick couple of runs, they got 3 runs, and then the pitching let it up and the offense kind of disappeared. And that's been the Mets basically MO over the past couple of weeks. Before the Mets really, the Mets offense really started to put runs together in bunches. I think since that Brewers series is when I noticed this shift start of putting up more runs and having just better, more competent at bats. Is that they'll go ahead and score early, but in the middle innings, it's basically like we're asking, where did this offense go? And I, this game is a strategy, not even a strategy, but something where you win a game no matter how the pitching does, and the bullpen coming in and giving up 5 runs between two pitchers and Garrett and Helsley, but you score enough runs because you don't let your foot off of the gas pedal, right? You score early and often. The Mets offense today got the ball rolling in the second inning. And they didn't look back. But the reason why the Mets won this game is because they were able to score runs into the middle stages of the game and going into the end of the game. Whereas in losses prior, especially against the same very Braves team at Citi Field the last go round, they score 6 early runs, and then the Braves come back and score 11 unanswered because the offense goes silent, coupled with the fact that the pitching with David Peterson in the bullpen had a meltdown. And so that's one thing where this Mets offense just cannot fall asleep at the wheel in the middle stages of the game, especially if the pitching and the bullpen is going to produce something like they have been over the past couple of weeks, but also tonight. Because the last point that I want to make on this post game is that the Mets and Carlos Mendoza have to get this bullpen rolling, especially with the names in the back end of this bullpen. Reed Garrett and Ryan Helsley, I understand. I really do think, this is my personal opinion, you moved Montas into the bullpen. The weather was a huge factor in the later stages of this game. It was raining, it was pouring, but they were playing through it, and I'm sure the conditions were not ideal. Pitchers don't like pitching in those types of environments, especially in blowout games. So while I do understand that Carlos Mendoza was trying to get some of these bullpen guys right that have been struggling as of recent, like Reed Garrett and like Ryan Helsley, who has not looked like the Ryan Helsley that we all know and have seen before in a Cardinals uniform ever since coming back or coming to the Mets at the trade deadline. I just don't know if tonight was the situation to do that, especially just given the conditions of the field and maybe some of the uncomfortability of these pitchers up on that mound. I'm sure it was muddy. I'm sure that they were just trying to fight to get comfortable, especially with that plant foot. I don't know. I just would have rather seen Montas in that situation, right? Where a guy's not really contributing out of the bullpen quite frequently for the New York Mets. And I do understand also that, a guy like Clay Holmes that is going to be pitching tomorrow versus Cal Quantrill has had length issues with his starts for quite some time now, for the past couple of months. And then you can reserve an arm like Frankie Montas to piggyback off of Clay Holmes if things don't go well for Clay Holmes. But I really do think that if you are going to utilize a get right game for any of these bullpen arms, it's unfortunate as it is because we're not going to see a lot of 12-2 leads for the New York Mets moving forward. But especially with the weather conditions and the field conditions, I don't know if this was the right game to do that if you're Carlos Mendoza. Now, at the same time, I'm giving these bullpen arms an excuse, and I really shouldn't be, because Ryan Helsley, we've been seeing a pattern now. And that's the most concerning thing to me, because us as Mets fans, I was ecstatic when we got Ryan Helsley, especially after seeing the Phillies go out there and get Joan Duran. Ryan Helsley was the proper move for David Stearns as a counter at that point, given who was left. And I don't think myself or anybody else really in this fan base was expecting for Ryan Helsley to be a problem for this Mets team that they needed to worry about and Carlos Mendoza needed to worry about. Well, right now he's a problem. As of recent, again, Reed Garrett has been a problem. The back end of this bullpen that was solidified at the deadline and is supposed to be a strong suit of this team, right? Outside of Rogers, Soto, and Diaz, you're talking about the other names. Predominantly Ryan Helsley, who was brought in here to be a setup guy for Edwin Diaz in the eighth inning, and he's got over a 7 ERA right now for the New York Mets. And he just does not look like the same Ryan Helsley because the slider, which is a really good pitch for him, he's been leaving out over the heart of the plate, and that needs to change. That absolutely needs to change. So, I am on borrowed time here. I do apologize. It is a little bit late. I was wondering if I was going to actually fit this post game in, but I'm glad that I did. Right? We talked about a lot of the key points with this Mets team. I'm sure in the future stream, especially with Rob or Zach, that I do, we're going to talk about the state of the New York Mets as well because it is crunch time. But for the sake of this being a win, there's a lot of room for improvement for this Mets team, I think, even still. And a game like this is just, it's refreshing, but it's back to square one tomorrow because you put up 12 runs today and tonight. You can't go out there and put up 3 runs tomorrow against Cal Quantrill, who's not have good numbers whatsoever. This Mets offense needs to show up more consistently, especially if these pitchers need more time to figure it out. And I don't know how much more time they need, but I will tell you this right now. If you take away any statement from this live stream, this is the statement that I want you all to take away, right? If Mr. Nolan McLean is able to come up here and do what he's doing right now in his first 2 starts, with the way that this rotation has looked, with the production that you just got in I honestly said it was a must sweep, but it was definitely a must win series against a lowly Nationals team. And you go out there and get lackadaisical performances from Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea. You cannot tell me that a name like Brandon Sproat should not be up on this major league squad right now. Now, I'm sure he's going to be up here. I don't know if it's going to be this week. I don't know if he'll be next week, right before the September call-ups are supposed to happen, but he needs to be up here sooner rather than later because you're starting to see the effect of Nolan McLean going deeper into ball games and looking just dominant, just like he did in the minor leagues, just like Brandon Sproat is looking in his last 10 starts in the minor leagues. Brandon Sproat can have a really big impact on this team moving forward, and we need to see him here and very soon. So that is what I will leave you all with. But really great win. I appreciate everyone spamming the W's as well. Shout out to Ray. Shout out to Jody. Shout out to Darren spamming the W's as well. I definitely appreciate that. Anytime we can spam the W's at this point of the season, right now, the way things have been going is absolutely phenomenal. And we'll take that all day long. Offense, good stuff. Let's have a repeat performance tomorrow against Cal Quantrill and the Braves bullpen. How about it? 12 runs, 21 hits, and no errors. No errors for the New York Mets defense. A defense that has struggled in previous weeks, especially with some of the decision making. I'm looking at Pete Alonso and that baseball that he decided to throw to second base in game 3 versus just taking the out at first base. It's just things like that. It doesn't come down to talent. It comes down to situational awareness and making the right decision. So that is also a very big point as well in this game. So I definitely appreciate everyone being in this live stream. Again, we usually do 45 to 50 minutes on the live stream, but I am strapped for time. It is a Friday night as well. I'm sure you all have, either sleep to get to or other things planned for the rest of your night. But it's a good night. It's always a good night when the New York Mets win, especially against the Atlanta Braves. And Elvin, as Elvin is saying right here, Brett Beatty, I mean, look at the splits. When they update the splits for this month on ESPN, Baseball Reference, whatever website you use to look at your New York Mets stats, look at Brett Beatty and what he's doing this month. Go look at what Francisco Lindor is doing this month as well. They are really turning it on when this offense needs them the most. So, yeah, I definitely appreciate it. Shout out to Rock as well. Spam me the W's. I appreciate it. Good night to all. And you know what? We'll be back tomorrow, whether it's with myself or Rob, talking about Mets versus Braves game 2 in Atlanta. Hopefully the rain holds off. I do have a typo right here. Next game is not in Queens. It is actually going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. So I appreciate everyone. This is a lengthy outro, and I do apologize about that. But please make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons for your boy and subscribe to the channel as well. As always, let's go Mets. See you all later. See you all tomorrow. Peace.